Excuse me. Welcome to What's Up over Edmonton for the month of December 2021. My name is Jeff Robertson, and I'm a member of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada Edmonton Centre. And as we got snow last month, I went out to the QEP and snapped a picture of snow at the QEP. And we showed the Queen Elizabeth Planetarium, which was Canada's first public planetarium, because the original intent of these sessions was to hold them live with an audience inside the QEP when it reopened after it had been restored. But because of the pandemic, they have not yet to reopen it. When we finally do go live there, because the Zoom has been so popular, we're going to keep doing that for all our Wednesday sessions, including Alistair's introduction to stargazing. And I presume the observers meeting, which is a group of our members that meet on the second Wednesday of the month. We call it What's Up over Edmonton because our skies here at 53 degrees north latitude are quite a bit different than what is shown in a lot of popular publications. For example, this is the sky over Toronto at 11 o'clock at night on July the 5th. And I always point out the constellation Scorpio here, which you can see completely, Scorpio the Scorpion, all the way down to the Stinger. From Toronto or anywhere in southern Ontario. However, in Edmonton, this is all we see. This is the most we're going to see of Scorpio. We never see the whole constellation. Anyway, most of the information comes out of the Observer's Handbook, which is put out by the RASC every year. I'm anxiously awaiting my 2022 copy, which they send to all members in the fall. The sky in December, long nights, bright stars. Some of the highlights in December is that Jupiter is still prominent in the evening sky. There is a line of planets in the early evening made up of Saturn, Jupiter, and Venus. And I'll talk about that in the planetarium portion. We have the Geminid meteor shower on the night of the 13th, morning of the 14th. That's when it peaks. And we have winter solstice on the 21st of the month, the longest night of the year. Sunrise today was at 8:27. It's set at 4:18. At the end of the month, it will rise at 8:50 and set at 4:24. I like to review stuff I talked about in November. So on November the 3rd, in the morning sky, we had the moon here and Mercury in a nice conjunction in the morning sky. On the 8th, in the evening sky, we had a nice conjunction of the moon and Venus. There's Venus there. Venus is quite brilliant. It doesn't show up really well in this photograph because otherwise I have to overexpose the moon. And we've been having these triangles for the last several months between Jupiter, Saturn, and the moon. We had one of those on the 10th in the evening sky. Of course, the highlight of the month was the lunar eclipse on the night of the 18th, morning of the 19th. We actually live streamed it in what one of my people that were there called a pathetic attempt to live stream an eclipse, because our camera didn't show any color. It's a color camera, but it didn't show any color. But I did snap this picture while we were doing the live stream, and there is a bit of color in the moon. The moon was 97% eclipse, which explains this little sliver of sunlight there. And we also had the Lunar X. There's a picture I took of the eclipse moon, and I overexposed it so I could get the Pleiades, which was just above it. And then we had the lunar X and V on the night of November 11th. There's the X. There's the V. It's a picture I took through my telescope. And this is just a blow up of that picture. There's the X there. There's the V. And that's just, you catch it. It lasts about 4 hours. It's just the sun shining on tops of craters along the terminator. Starting the planetarium program part of the presentation, as you can see, I have done away with the grass landscape and replaced it with a snow landscape, as we now have snow on the ground here in Edmonton. And I'm going to start this the way they used to start programs at the old Queen Elizabeth Planetarium, with a little bit of a sunset. So let's start the clock here. And it's about 5:30 now. So I put in the constellation guides, the ecliptic, and the labels for the planets. And as you can see at 5:30, and this is set for tomorrow, December 2nd, we've got a line of visible planets, Jupiter, Saturn, and hugging the horizon is Venus here. It's also Neptune, which you need steady binoculars or a small telescope to see. And if we go over here, we've got Uranus and the dwarf planet Ceres, which we've been watching for the last several months as it makes its way through the constellation Taurus, the Bull. Now we'll stay at 5:30 for just a few minutes here while we talk about Venus. Venus is very low in the southwest sky, hugging the horizon. And on the days on the 4th, it actually reaches its greatest brilliancy in this orbital cycle. And if you have a small telescope and zoomed in on Venus, you would see that it is a fat crescent shape. I took a photograph of it a few weeks ago, the night in the middle of November, and it displayed almost a slightly less than half phase, but by December the 4th, it's a fat crescent. And if we advance a couple more days, on the 6th, Venus is joined by the moon. Now, to see this, you need a clear horizon to catch Venus and the moon together. The next night, the moon has moved quite a ways away, but on the 6th, it is just below Venus, about 3 degrees. Okay, the time now is 6:30, and we're back to December the 2nd. And as you can see, Jupiter and Saturn are quite a bit lower than they have been. They've been dominating the sky for the last several months, but they're getting ready to make their exit from the early evening sky. And if we advance the sky through the month, by the end of the month, on the 31st, New Year's Eve, Saturn is right near the horizon, Jupiter not too far behind it. So if you want to get out and see Jupiter and Saturn in the early evening, now is the time to do it. I'll just point out that on the 8th at around 7 o'clock, you can make a nice triangle with Jupiter, the moon, and Saturn. It'll be really the last time we'll be able to do that for a while. Okay, moving on to 9 o'clock. Saturn has set. Jupiter is low in the southwest. Neptune and Uranus and Ceres, all objects you could see with a good pair of binoculars or a small telescope, are all fairly well placed in the sky. And we see most of the winter constellations are now above the horizon by 9 o'clock. We've got Orion the Hunter with his club raised high, striding across the southern sky, or as the Cree people call him, Mistapew the Giant. We've got Taurus the Bull, got Gemini, Cancer's just kind of poking his head up there, and almost all the really bright winter constellations are above the horizon, but we just have to wait a little bit longer for Canis Major, the Great Dog, and the bright star Sirius to come up at this hour of the night. If we, of course, a little later, it will be above the horizon. If we look toward the north at 9 o'clock in the evening, we see the Cygnus, Lyra, and Aquila the Eagle, whose three bright stars make up the summer triangle. Bring that up here. Are now very low in the west-northwest sky, and where they will skirt the northern horizon throughout the winter before making their appearance high in the sky again in the summer and the fall of 2022. Also, Ursa Major, the Big Dipper, is skirting fairly low on the horizon as well at this hour of the night. Okay, I moved the clock ahead again to 11 o'clock and moved the date ahead to December the 13th, which is the night of the Geminid meteor shower, one of the best meteor showers of the year. The Geminids are so named because the radiant, the point in the sky in which, if you followed the path of the meteors, would all go back to a point in the sky which we call the radiant. They all seem to emanate from this spot here in the sky. So it is this night, the 13th, going into the morning of the 14th, is the peak of the Geminid meteor shower, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But we do have a waxing gibbous moon, 10 days old, which is going to eliminate you seeing some of the fainter meteors. Of course, with all meteor showers, we always say get away from the city and for your best view, and put the lights of the city behind you. And by 11 o'clock, all the bright stars of winter are now above the horizon, as seen from Edmonton. And 6 of these very bright stars make up what is informally called the winter circle, or the winter hexagon. And so, starting at the top in the constellation of Gria, the charioteer, we have Capella. We go down into Taurus for Aldebaran. Down to the corner of Orion, we have Rigel. And we go down into Canis Major, and we have Sirius, which is the brightest star we can see from Earth in either the northern or the southern hemisphere. Going off this way, we come to Procyon in the constellation Canis Minor, which is just a stick. It's supposedly the little dog. Looks more like the dog's bone, but anyway. And then finally we come to Pollux in the constellation Gemini. So these 6 stars make a circle or a hexagon, if you will, in the sky. The moon is full on the 18th, and the full moon in December sits directly above Orion, which brings an interesting story. The path of the moon in December pretty much echoes the path of the sun in the daytime 6 months later in June. And if any of you had, my kids are all adults now. They're all, late 20s, early 30s. But when they were little, they really liked Harry Potter, and I read them all the stories. And we went and saw all the movies too. But one thing I noticed, I think it was the Half-Blood Prince. Harry was doing an astronomy class, and one of the things, and it was near the end of term, so it would have been in June, and one of the things he was looking at in June was Orion. And when I was reading this to my kids, I thought, that's kind of funny, because this is the sky 6 months from now, in June, and as you can see, or maybe it doesn't show on the screen here. Let me get rid of the daylight. There we go. You can see there's the sun there directly over Orion in the daytime. So I don't know what he was looking at, but he couldn't have been looking at Orion because you wouldn't be able to see it in the daytime in June. So I like the Harry Potter books. I thought they were really interesting. They got a lot darker as the series went on, but I did like that a lot of the characters were named after stars, like Sirius Black and Bellatrix Lestrange and Rigel Black, Draco Malfoy, named after the constellation. I like that, but they got the astronomy wrong in one of the books. Anyway, on the 22nd, we have another meteor shower, the Ursid meteor shower. It's a kind of a minor one. There's the radiant point near the Little Bear, Little Dipper. 5 to 10 an hour on a from a dark sky, but we have the moon, a waning gibbous moon hanging in the sky, which is going to block out most of the meteors that we normally can see. But if you're at a dark site, you might catch a few every hour. Give it a go. Dress warm. Take some hot coffee or hot chocolate along. And those are the Ursid meteor shower. That's the Ursid meteor shower. And early in the month, there are several fine passes of the International Space Station. I watched a really nice one on the 29th, where it was about as high as it gets visible from Edmonton. It's about 62 degrees up, and it was extremely bright, brighter than Jupiter, and Jupiter was up, so you could easily compare the brightness of the space station with that planet. So give it a look. Here's the chart. Now we're going to pop into the morning sky for a little bit here because of Comet Leonard C2021A1. And we can see it right here. Just going to make it red there. There we go. And we still, at this time, don't know if it's going to be a naked eye or a really bright comet. Right now, it is visible in a small telescope. It may be visible in binoculars. So I'm going to talk about this a little later on, specifically, and in that time I'm going to have the time set at 5:30, but this time for this session I'm going to have it set at 6:30, so it's a little higher up in the sky. But if we watch the comet here, I'm just going to center it here. It is heading toward the constellation Bootes, the herdsman, and the very bright star Arcturus, which is this guy right here. And over the next few days, this is tomorrow morning, it's going to be inside the constellation Bootes on the 6th, passing the bright star Arcturus. And then it will dive toward the horizon because it will be out of our sky. It'll be in the southern hemisphere, and we won't be able to see it anymore. So hopefully it will get bright enough to be a really good comet. So here it is on the 12th. This is when it is closest to the Earth, and at 7:30 it's right on the horizon. Now if we made the time a little later, say 59, so it's a little bit above the horizon at 6:59, and the sky is still relatively dark. Again, comets are very unpredictable. It may be a good one, it may be a binocular one, it may only be in small telescopes, who knows? But it's certainly worth a look. Hopefully we'll have clear skies. I know the skies haven't been very good these past few days, but you never know. But give it a go. I know I will be, and maybe I'll be even be able to take a couple pictures. Who knows? But that's Comet Leonard, and as I say, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on also. Just flipping over into the morning sky to talk about Mars, and I've set the time for 7:30 tomorrow morning. And if you are up and you have a very clear view to the east-southeast horizon, you may catch Mars and a very thin crescent moon, as you can see here. The moon will be new on the 4th, but as I say, tomorrow morning we have Mars and the moon. Mars and the moon are about 4 degrees separation. It's about 8 full moon widths. As I say, you'll need a very clear horizon with no clouds or haze to make out Mars and the moon together in the same sky. And I'll finish with this view of the sky at 11:59, 1 minute to midnight on New Year's Eve. Neptune has set, Jupiter's set, Saturn's set, Uranus is up, Ceres is up. All the bright winter constellations are riding high. Even Leo, which I associate more as a spring constellation, is popping up over the horizon. And I think that's it for December. Okay, if I had known we would have technical difficulties, I would have talked quicker in this, but what do you know? Any questions at this time? Okay, I'll continue on with the moon.
What do you see when you look at the moon? When it's full and round, do you see a balloon? Does it look like a cookie with the bite taken out? What do you see when you look at the moon? It follows
okay, the moon is new on the 4th. First quarter is on December the 10th. The moon is full on the 18th, and it is known as the cold moon, also known as the long night moon, and also the oak moon. And I should clarify something I said in the planetarium program. When I said the path of the moon echoes the path of the sun, I meant to say the path of the full moon echoes the path of the sun 6 months later. So that was a mistake on my part. And then on the 26th, it's third quarter. The lunar features I take out of the RASC lunar observing programs. They have two. They have one for binoculars, one for a small telescope. The one I'm taking today is from the binocular program, and it is the crater Grimaldi. And this is a photo of mine. And there is Grimaldi. It's a lunar basin, also known as the dark floored crater. And this is just a better picture of it. There it's circled. It's named after a 17th century Jesuit priest and astronomer, Francisco Grimaldi. He and another Jesuit priest astronomer named Giovanni Roccalli created one of the first lunar maps and used it to name lunar craters. Over 36 lunar craters were coincidentally named after other Jesuit priests / scientists. And I don't know if you noticed the difference between the picture I took, the first picture, and then this one, which I just got off the internet, how Grimaldi has shifted over a bit from my picture, and also this Mary over here had shifted, and that is known, is caused by something called vibration. And I'm going to talk about that sometime next year. So something to look forward to. This is a close-up of the crater right there. And here is named crater is Grimaldi, and his friend Roccalli has a crater named after him right next to it. Crater itself is 172 kilometers wide. It's at its deepest point, it's 2.7 kilometers deep. Now, Grimaldi had reports of occasional flashes of light and colors and haze visible inside the crater, and also gaseous emissions from the area have been detected by spectroscopes here on Earth. So there may be some volcanic activity still going on the moon, centered in this crater. And this is a view from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter looking straight down at the crater, and Grimaldi has several satellite craters all around it. Possibly later impacts. The Grimaldi itself is quite old. Its walls are quite eroded from impacts over the eons. But so that's the crater Grimaldi, easily visible in a good pair of binoculars, or obviously in a small telescope. And it is, as I say, one of the features in the certificate programs put out by the RESC. Now, because of all our technical problems, maybe I had a hunch something was going on, but I don't have a constellation this month. We had supply chain issues, so no constellation this month. Sorry. Other highlights this month are the Geminid meteor showers, which peak on the morning of the 14th. And as I mentioned, the planetarium program with the gibbous moon interferes. And the Ursid meteor shower peaks on the 22nd. And again, the waning gibbous moon interferes. But if you want to go and see the showers, and hopefully it's clear. I know it hasn't been very clear these last few weeks. I've only seen a few clear nights, but get away from the city, dress very warmly, take a sleeping bag, nice comfortable chair, and just enjoy the show. There are moon and planet conjunctions with Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, and I talked about those in the planetarium program. And then we have the winter solstice on the 21st. And because this happens before the next What's Up, I'll point out perihelion, where the Earth is closest to the sun in its orbit, occurs on January 4th, 2022. Now, as I said in the planetarium program, I'm going to talk a little bit more about Comet Leonard. So I set the time here for 5:30 because that's probably the time I'm going to get up. You know, I've been getting up early in the morning and just having to look outside, and all I see is a milky white sky. But you know, hopefully we'll get a few clear mornings and go out and take my chances, see if I can see this thing. So anyway, here's Comet Leonard on the 3rd, approaching the constellation Bootes, and the very bright star Arcturus. It's one of the brightest stars in our sky. You can't miss it. If you want to find it, it's easy, although you can see just the handle of the Big Dipper here. You just follow the arc of the handle and it'll point to Arcturus. As we say, we arc to Arcturus. So this is the 3rd. On the 4th, you can see the comet covers a fair amount of sky over just a period of a day. On the 5th, it is entering Bootes. On the 6th, it is in Bootes. 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, getting low. And by the 11th, it's below the horizon at 5:30. You know, 6:30 is still above the horizon, but the 11th is pretty much the last time we got a really good shot at seeing it from our skies here in Edmonton. There are finder charts on the Heavens Above website. You just go to Heavens Above, find the menu for comets. I think Comet Leonard is the top comet on their finder charts right now. And when you go to Heavens Above, make sure you put in where you are. Otherwise, it'll default to the equator somewhere in Africa. So you put in for Edmonton, and it'll show you a chart of where to find the comet. So this is a general chart showing Bootes on the 6th, the day it's inside the constellation, and then a close up, and there it is. There, this little. It almost looks like a pellet, doesn't it? Their representation. But anyway, so Heavens Above has finder charts for every day. Check it out if you're unsure where to find it. Find the comet, that is. And as I mentioned, we have meteor showers. There's the radiant for Gemini, or the Geminids. Night of the 13th, morning of the 14th. It's caused by debris from an asteroid 3,200 fathom. Normally under dark skies, you can see anywhere between 50 and 120 meteors per hour, but the moon over here is interfering that night. So you might see, 30, 40. You never know. But definitely get to a dark site. And if you're in the city, you're only going to see a handful of meteors every every hour. And then, as I mentioned, the Ursas on the morning of the 22nd. There's the radiant there, right next to Ursa Minor, or the Little Dipper. There's Polaris right up there at the end of the handle. It's caused by debris from Comet 8P Tuttle. It's not a great shower. It's 5 to 10 per hour under dark skies. But again, the moon is in the sky that night. But if you do go out, dress warm, take a blanket or a sleeping bag and a hot drink, and enjoy the show. Solstice is on the 21st. It's when the northern hemisphere is tilted at its greatest angle away from the sun. And so what we get is winter in the northern hemisphere, eternal darkness above the Arctic Circle, which is 66.5 degrees north. And if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's summer, it's hot. Rolf Harris is singing about 6 white boomers bringing Santa to Australia. And if you're in Antarctica, the sun never goes down. And that's just a chart of the Earth going around the sun with our axis pointed at 23.5 degrees. Here's the summer solstice with the northern hemisphere pointed toward the sun, and 6 months later we're pointed away from the sun. That's how we have our seasons. The winter solstice officially happens at 9:59 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on the 21st, and on that day the sun comes up at 8:48 in the morning and sets at 4:16 in the evening. I'll go to our space history. Okay, I always pick an event that happens, whose happening happens to be an anniversary that's divisible by 5. So for the last time in this year, it is an event that happened a year whose end in 1 or 6. So this is kind of a convoluted one. So we're going to have a little fun. So one of my favorite Star Trek: The Next Generation episodes is from season 5, and the episode is called Cause and Effect. And in a nutshell, and there are spoilers, and the episode teaser has the Enterprise in deep trouble, systems are failing, the ship is spinning out of control, and then it explodes. Roll the opening titles. After that, all is normal. Senior officers are playing poker when Dr. Crusher is called to sick bay. And Chief Engineer Geordie LaForge reports a dizzy spell which almost had him fall over a rail to his death. Crusher asked if any of this has happened before. LaForge says no, but Crusher feels she's seen the condition before. That night, Crusher hears voices in her cabin. Other crews report the same thing. The next day, the Enterprise encounters an anomaly in space-time, and all the propulsion systems start to fail, and the ship is dead in space. Another ship emerges from the anomaly on a collision course. Captain Picard asks for suggestions. Commander Riker thinks decompression of the shuttle bay will push the Enterprise out of the way. Commander Data suggests using the tractor beam to alter the other ship's course. Picard orders the tractor beam. The ships collide. Enterprise is heavily damaged and blows up. Go to commercial. We're back at the poker game. All the players have a sense of deja vu, and LaForge is in sickbay again. Picard thinks he's read a book that he's never read before. The Enterprise encounters the anomaly, collides, and explodes. And after the commercial break, the poker game begins again, only now the players know which cards are going to be dealt. When the voices are heard in Crusher's cabin, she's ready and records them with a tricorder. The senior staff meet to discuss the situation. Data is analyzed, Crusher's recording and reports it's the voices of the crew, and he's isolated 3 snippets indicating Enterprise has been subject to a very bad thing, a disaster.
I have isolated 3 segments of this recording that are crucial.
Highly localized distortions of the space-time continuum. Collision course impact in 36 seconds. All hands abandon ship! Repeat, all hands abandon!
Geordi finds that they're caught in a repeating time loop, possibly for days, weeks, or years, brought on by some cataclysmic disturbance in the space-time continuum, decyons, tachyons, or as Greta Thunberg might say, blah, blah, blah. The crew work out a way to send a message into the next loop through Data's positronic brain. He'll perceive it as a subconscious level. The collision occurs, but Data does manage to send a message prior to the ship exploding into the next loop. Back at the poker game, instead of the previous cards dealt, all players have 3 of a kind. After reports of deja vu and decyon field fluctuations, blah, 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 a ship-wide diagnostic comes back, all 3s. There are instances of 3 popping up all over the ship. When they encounter the anomaly and Picard asks for suggestions to avoid the collision, Data realized he was behind the 3s. And they referred to Riker's rank insignia and his idea of decompressing the shuttle bay was the correct course of action. The collision is avoided. The crew finds their clocks are off by 17 days. The other ship is a Starfleet design that's been out of service for 80 years. The other ship hails them and learn it's the USS Bozeman, commanded by the guy who played Fraser, although I'll always think of him as the voice of Sideshow Bob. So what does all this have to do with anything? And I've dragged you down this path, which included Commander Riker's 3 rank pips to talk about Luna 13, the 3rd craft to soft land on the moon, December 24th, 1966. And I wrote down here, wink, wink. So hang on a sec here. All right. The Soviet Union launched Luna 13 on December 21st, 1966, and it landed in the oceans of storms on the 24th. And here we have a diagram showing various components. It was very similar to Luna 9, which made the very first soft landing of the moon in February of 66. Surveyor 1, which was the United States' first soft lander, landed in June of that year. As I say, it was a very similar design. Luna 13 was 2.7 meters tall, weighed 1,700 kilograms. And at the top, this ball-shaped thing, that's where the actual lander was housed. The rest of this bus was just to get the thing to the moon, get it close to the moon. And then the lander was ejected, had airbags that inflated, and it bounced on the moon, rolled to a stop, and then opened up and began its transmission. As I said, it was 2.7 meters tall. The actual landing ball, and here's another diagram of it. The landing ball, this guy here, was 58 centimeters across, the whole thing, and it weighed 112 kilograms. And as I said, it used airbags to cushion its landing on the moon. So I've got a little animation. I showed this back in February when I talked about Luna 9, but we'll show it again. So as it approaches the moon, its main engine is firing. There's 4 Vernier engines on the side. And as it gets close to the moon, it deploys these long wires, which when they impact the moon, you can see them there. When they hit the moon, it'll eject, there it goes, ejects the landing ball, which has airbags already inflated. And it would bounce along on the moon the airbags would deflate, and the landing portion would just open up. These petals would open up, and it would begin transmitting. Now that was the Luna 9. I could not find anything showing Lunar 13, but it was basically the same because the spacecraft were very similar. Luna 13 was the first probe to land on the moon that returned something other than photos, though. So it did have some extra equipment. And here's a diagram of it. It had devices for measuring the surface, tension. It had a penetrometer on one of these arms. These arms were 1.5 meters long, and they were folded in 5 places, and they would deploy out onto the surface. And they would measure the surface tension of the soil, determine what the soil was made out of. They also had a densitometer, and it would use gamma rays to project down beneath the topsoil to get an idea of what was immediately underneath the topsoil on the moon. And it also had cameras. It had 2 cameras on it to take pictures. Inside the bus itself of the lander, it also had radiation measuring equipment, as well as thermal measuring equipment. And this is a few panoramas of where it landed. It found it landed, it's kind of, well, because the ocean of storms is so big. Luna 9, Luna 13, and Surveyor 1 all landed in the ocean of storms, and Surveyor 3, which was the second American soft lander to succeed, Surveyor 2 crashed, all landed in the ocean of storms. So they found the ground around where Luna 13 landed was a lot flatter, and they could see a lot further. Its cameras could see details as small as 1.5 millimeters across. And this is an artist's rendering of Luna 13 on the moon. The surface measuring instruments indicated that the topsoil was about 5 centimeters deep where it landed. And the surface underneath the topsoil was primarily basalt. The radiation detectors determined that the radiation levels on the moon at that time would be safe for human beings to land. And they also found that the surface temperature were to be about 117 degrees Celsius. The lander, unlike the American landers, which were solar powered, the Lunas were, Luna 9, Luna 13 were only battery powered. And so their battery power lasted till December 28th. And then it just went dead. And this is a picture from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and it's really hard to see, but that little white spot in the middle of this red circle, that's Luna 13 sitting on the moon. As I mentioned before, Heavens Above is a great source for finder charts for comets, also satellite tracking, tracking the ISS, finding the times it's going to fly over, etc. All sorts of information on Heavens Above, the planets, stars, etc. Next, What's Up is on Wednesday, January 5th, 7:30. Hopefully we won't have any more technical problems. Our next meeting of the RSC is on December the 13th at 7:30. That's a Monday. And Alistair, because his introduction to stargazing for December was going to land right in the middle of the Christmas season, he has postponed it, and his next introduction to stargazing will be on Wednesday, January 26th. So this is the last one of the year, And there we go. Put on some holiday attire. There we go. And wish everyone best of the season. Happy Hanukkah. If you're of that persuasion, I know it's the third night of Hanukkah tonight. Or if you like Seinfeld, Happy Festivus, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, etc. And with that, I will say good night. Okay. So, are there any questions? I see we have some chats here. Oh, happy all. Oh, thank you everyone for the holiday greetings. So, do we have any questions? No. Okay then. If that's the case, again, I do apologize for the technical problems at the beginning. This is recorded, so I will edit out all those problems and stick this up on YouTube. And you can tell your friends if you'd like them to watch it. And with that, I will say thank you for joining us, and good night.